Hello, my darlings. This is Miss Darling in the studio, and today's subject is belly bands. And before I start showing you some that I've made, let me show you a couple that I have purchased from other people. And this is one of them, which is very lovely. It's made of lots of different fabrics, different types of laces, and little flowers and buttons, and very nicely done. The advantage of this type of belly band is it can also be used vertically as a vertical band or even a side tuck. So that's one of the advantages of this type of design. Here's another one by someone else, and I would tell you who these gals were, but I honestly don't remember who they are. This one is a handmade, done a lot of stitching on this one. This one has, I think, 2 or 3 rows of fabric going down underneath, and then bits and pieces of fabric that have been laid kind of at an angle with periodic buttons sewn on, and of course it's sewn on down, sewn together down the middle. And this one, like that one, can be used vertically as well as horizontally, and that's an advantage of this style of band. I, however, am going to show you ones that are strictly belly bands, and that's because they can only be used horizontally. And that's on purpose. I will do a video of a different nature on the vertical type later, but for this one, I'm focusing strictly on the horizontal belly band. Okay. While I think these are beautiful and very well made, I must say, they are very expected. The repetition is very constant, and even though the fabrics change as you go along and the buttons are different, the whole style of it is very expected, and therefore I want to try to do something that is more unexpected from point A to point B. And I've watched just a couple of videos by other creators. I have to be careful that as a creator I don't watch very much that's being done, because I don't want to be heavily influenced by what other people are doing. There's always the risk then of doing something that's so similar to what somebody else has done that it ceases to be 100% original. Now, no one can achieve 100% originality except the Father of creation, but I try to limit how much intake I get from other people and only seek it when I do for a little bit of inspiration. But I always try to do my own thing in my own crazy style. So let me show you what I have already done. This is my very first one, and I'm not going to say I'm 100% pleased with it. It is what it is, and it was experimental, and it consists of mostly paper, and then there's some twine down these areas where you see the black twine, and just one little piece of fabric down here. Other than that, it's really just papers overlaid upon other papers. And that's one style. And then I wanted to get something that was a little more color coordinated than that one. So I created this one. And this one I'm much more pleased with. For one reason, while I still use the twine in between to kind of break it up and accent a little bit, the twine does not jump out and grab you like it does on this one. On this one, it more takes center stage, and I'm not pleased with that. I'd like it to be a little more blended, and so therefore your attention goes to the nice imagery from one end to the other instead of the twine in between. So I'm going to demonstrate these two today, and if I get time, I might go into this other style, which is this, which is much more random, a little more vintage looking, and kind of very asymmetrical. This was one of the first ones I did where I used fabric and paper and some of the fabric threads that I've collected, and a little dangle that I made, and a little wooden button. And then here's another one, very similar to the other one. It's just a color palette change, and kind of fun and different. And then here's the third one, similar style, different palette, and just different items that are put on. So I will show you how I made these as well, and we'll make one of each style. These two I consider to be one style, and then these three a different one. So let's get to work. Now, the first thing I did was I used some carpet tape. This is 2 inches wide. I'll put a link to it in the description box below. And it's double-sided tape, and you get 10 yards in it, so it would make a ton of belly bands or vertical bands, whatever you want to do with it. Now, before I start, let me give you a caution on this. If you're going to use carpet tape or any other industrial tape that is double-sided, whether it's 2 inches or whatever, if you plan to sew your bands once they're done, do not use this type of product, because the adhesive is so strong, and it's not the kind of adhesive like a wet glue that dries. It will completely ruin your sewing machine, and it will completely ruin your needle if you try to do it by hand, because the adhesive is not a dry adhesive. It's wet and it's very strong, and it will stick to your needles and completely destroy them. So if you're going to sew, make sure that any substrate or product that you use in your band is done with either wet glue that dries, or a glue stick that dries. Do not use a double-sided tape of industrial nature like this. Okay? Alright. Now, I made my bands 1 foot long. 1 foot is long enough to cover, as a belly band, at least 2 pages, a little more than 2 pages of the journals that I make. My journals are 5.5 by 8.5, which is half the size of a letter size sheet of paper here in the United States. And so if you are out of the country, you'll need to make yours according to, if you're going to use them in a journal, then, you know, make them to suit the size and shape of your journals, so they are as versatile for you as they can be. And you see how strong that adhesive is. I can hardly get my fingers off on both sides because it is so strong. So there we have approximately 12 inches or 1 foot of length. Now, what I began with in this particular style here, I have these little booklets of imagery. I bought these off the internet from Amazon. They, of course, are made in China, and they're various types of imagery printed on vellum paper. They're slightly translucent, but while the imagery is really nice and very different all throughout the little booklets, it's very subdued and has to be used on a white background or it's not going to show up. When I say white, I mean, you know, it could be off-white, but it needs to have a light background so you can see the imagery. Otherwise, it's useless to work with them. So that's what I did with this one. I tore off mostly images from one of these little booklets, and then I had a couple of swatches left over, not swatches, but scraps of paper from one of my master boards from something else I was making, and it had some green in it, and so I threw that into the mix. But by and large, most of the imagery on this is from these little booklets, so they're very nice. I got them kind of thinking that I would use them like stickers, and I have done that a couple of times, but there's no adhesive on them, and so I thought, well, this is a great way to use up some of this that I've had. I don't go to it very often, probably because most of my backgrounds are too dark to even use them, but I thought this is a great time to use some of these. So I guess I'm just going to randomly kind of thumb through this, and I'm going to just kind of look for color, because color's the most important thing, I think, in design. And you want your colors to blend and to be pleasing to the eye. And if they're not, I don't care how well you make something, you're probably not going to be pleased with it in the end, because the color just is everything. So I'm trying to find something that I might want to use in a journal I had planned, and not really seeing much in this one. Let's try this one. I did take one completely apart, and that looks kind of fun. It's you won't be able to see it probably, it's a bicycle with the words joy, the something at the top. So now the color of this looks like a kind of a tan in the background, a little bit of green, some brown in there. So let's just decide right now our color palette for this one will be tan, and ooh, that's kind of nice. I like that. What's this? This is tan in the background, but red flowers. So there's two possibilities. Here's something that appeals to me. Butterflies always appeal to me. This is just kind of clear in the background with black, so we got kind of, you know, what would wind up being kind of more like a black and white. Here's something kind of tan. I could see those two going together, so that's a possibility for that one. Here's something with some more red flowers, a little dragonfly. That's nice. I could see that blending nicely with this one here. You see what I'm doing? I'm looking for color and how I can use it. Now this one has a strong red circular piece in the upper corner that could go nicely with this one. And then just look for something black with red to finish out the color of that. That could possibly go over here. What's this? Not anything. Here's something with a tan background. Could work nicely with that one. Here's another one with a tan background. So whichever one comes out the winner is the one we'll kind of go with in terms of having enough variety. And let's see, I needed to do a foot long. I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those, and then 2 of mine. One is a little thinner, so 8, and then I needed a little strip there. So I'm going to say I need about 8 of these to go the 12 inches. Here's something with some red. Oh, that's more orange. Okay, I'm not going to ask you to sit here and watch me thumb through this. I'm going to pause the video while I finish doing this and then come back when I have one that's totally ready to go. Okay, I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I'm back, and I have done a lot of sorting, and I wound up with a whole lot in the kind of tan and black category, but I decided for design training purposes today that I would go with these 2 sets of groupings that I pulled out. This is more of a red, white, and black palette, and here we have a kind of a little bit tannish white, black, a little bit of brownish tone in there. Very much more subdued, not as dramatic as up here, and that's by design so that I can teach what I'm doing. So these are the choices that I'm going to go with, and so I think I'll do that one first. Now, I already know that I need 8 portrait formatted pieces to fill up 12 inches. So I had eliminated all the ones that were a landscape format. And so I'm left only with portrait. By that I mean taller rather than wider, taller pieces that go along here to fill up my belly band, because that's going to be 12 inches long and it's 2 inches high. So here we have the belly band. This is the base of it. As I said earlier, this is carpet tape. You can use anything really, but this is nice because the adhesive's already on there and there's no adhesive at all on any of these. So I'm going to, let me first talk a little bit about the design and placement of why I put these where I did. Is because, first of all, I'm an asymmetrical designer, but I also know that with 12 inches to work with and my journals typically being 5.5 inches wide, I need a good 5 inches to go across a page. And I have 12 inches, so that's more than enough to cover 2 pages and even have 2 inches left over. So where would I want my focal point to be if I were going to cut this in half? Well, I don't want it right in the middle. I told you stay away from the middle. And so therefore the best position for a focal point on each side is either position number 2 or position number 3. So in this case, I have a focal point at position number 3, and then working this way, I also have a position number 3 because there's only 7 here. So what am I going to do? Here's what I'm going to do. I have a strong red over here that's concentrated in one spot. So I made an equivalent to these in black cardstock. I'm going to put a 1-inch strip over here, and that's not where I wanted it to go. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. For design purposes of the whole 12 units, I would probably do something more like this. This is a fairly strong piece simply because, you know, it's got a strong butterfly on it, and it's got a lot of clear area in it, which helps draw your eye to it. And so if I did, I've got 1 1/4, 2 1/4, 3 1/4, 4, that would be cut in half. So if I went, you know, something like that for half, and then I do that for half, I think I'll switch that around, put that there, and put that there. So if I'm looking at that for 1 page, then I would be looking at, so if this was 1 page and then I had this on the another page, whether they were across from each other or not is not important. Then this one, which is kind of subdued compared to the others, would wind up being the one that's cut off of each side. and so that's preferable. That's one of the weaker ones simply because it's a little harder to read and doesn't draw your attention as much as any of the others. So I would make this one sort of the expendable one. So this could be, say, a left page like that, and then this would be like a right page. Okay, so that my centers of influence, my focal points, the ones that grab your attention to the most, lie more centrally located on one half, and over here the same thing. Well, let's see, I might move that like that. This would still be kind of the expendable one. If I did, say, a 5-inch billy band, I would be cropping there, and I would be cropping there, and down here I would be cropping off of both of these, leaving my centers of interest alone and more toward the middle of the page. Not the exact middle. We don't want the exact middle. But let's say if it was 5 inches, it's off center. No matter which side you look at, the red pieces are off center, and so is the strong black strips off center where we need them. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, this is what I'm doing. So the first thing that goes down, I don't like how that glue is turned over there. You know what? I'm going to cut a whole new piece. I'll be right back. Okay, I cut a new piece so the adhesive isn't all messed up on one end. So I'm just going to place an outer one in there first, trying to get it as straight as I can. And then next comes my band of black. I'm going to drop that in right there. Then my focal point. I originally had this one on the outside, but I don't want it to be cropped. I like that. Oh, dang. I hope I can lift this up. I got it a little crooked. Whoa. Okay. Let's be a little careful here. Make sure we line it up. If I'm going to have any overlap, that's okay. Then this is our expendable one that will probably be cut in two at some point. And then we have, what are we doing here? Oh, that's nice. Too bad to have it be on the end, but I think we're going to do this over here. And that's too nice to waste it on the end. So let me find something else maybe to go there and keep that for another time. Oop. Let's do the same thing. Make sure you're lining up the bottom and get it as straight as you can. I didn't do such a good job there, so I'll have to kind of fix that at some point. And then we're going to drop this in. And this is an expendable end piece. Alright, now I'm going to use some of these black strips that I had cut out for a masterboard and then didn't need them. And so I'm going to do some overlapping. And hopefully we'll have something that comes out looking nice and beautiful and balanced for anyone wanting to keep the entire 12 inches intact. And then something that's easily cut up into billy bands for a smaller journal. And I have a thin one here. I'm going to use right there to cover over that tiny little spot right there where I didn't quite overlap the way I should have. And once we get this on, then we'll take a look at the whole thing overall and see if we need to do anything else. I don't think I want to border each and every one, but I do have an overlap here that I think I'll cover over, and then I think we'll be done with this one. This thinner strip is about 1/8 of an inch wide, and this one here is about 1/4 of an inch wide, in case you're wondering about measurements. And I'm going to slice off this edge here. Try to get it nice and straight. And we now have our 12-inch mark is right there, but I want to give a little more than that. This might be sold to someone, and I always try to over deliver, so we're going to make it a little bit, we're going to make this a little bit longer than 12 inches. Always make things a tiny bit bigger than you promise, so no one can accuse you of shorting them, and to give them a little extra to play with. So I'm going to turn this over, and I want to burnish it. So I'm going to burnish it from the back first. And that keeps something from hopefully lifting up on me if I decide to burnish the front as well. Just, you know, make sure it's all nicely adhered. Excuse me. And so here's what we have. And here's our measurement. And you can see I'm just a little over 12 inches. This bare spot kind of jumps out at me. Just for the sake of having something nicely finished off, I think I will take a thin strip and maybe put that in there as well. Yeah. Then if it's cut in two, we have some really nice asymmetry going on each side. Okay, and then check from the reverse to see if there's anything that's hanging over a little bit, and this is right here, so we'll trim that off nice. A little bit going on up here because I didn't quite get one of them on as straight as I should have. Right, so there we have one, and it's kind of a little on the modernish side, but even though our imagery in many cases is quite vintage, it worked out pretty well. I'm not 100% in love with it, but I hope somebody will be if I don't ever wind up using it. Okay, on to the second one. And in the second one, I had more vintage imagery. And these two are my focal points. and this one got pulled out from the others. Oh no, this one was it. Okay, so how many do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that number 8? I don't see any others, so I guess that was number 8. Okay. I have these two, which are almost mates. They're actually the same thing, just slightly different positioning. So I'm going to put them on the outside. Then I'll choose something, which way does this go? I had it right. Then position 3 will be a focal point, and so that could be 1/2. And then on the other side, we would have something like this. So our focal points are not in the middle, but not on the outside either. And I think that looks pretty good. So we will, I think, go with that as a strategy. So we'll start with this one. Oh, gosh. You do have to be careful and not get too close until you're ready to plunk them down. I'm trying hard to extricate myself from the adhesive. So that's kind of a downside. Maybe it's just a little too strong to work all that well. You certainly do have to be careful. And I recommend overlapping just a bit. Maybe we can get through the rest of this without me bungling it up. Helps not to talk. good. We are almost exactly 12 inches. A little bit more. Yeah, a little bit more than 12 inches. Okay, and burnishing from the back first. And there we go. Belly band and cutting it in half. The halfway point is right here. So expendable areas are these outside pieces, which is fine because they're very busy and not that important. And so, yeah, very pleased with how this one came out. And I hope you can see a difference in how it all came together and why I do what I do. So if that's for one journal page, you can see that it's nicely balanced with an asymmetrical balance, and then this would be the another page, whether it's the opposite page or a different page altogether. Somewhere else, you know, you'd be looking at something like that, and I think it works on both sides. Very, very pleased with the design and how this one came out. Even though there's not a huge amount of value contrast going on, I think it still is very pleasing to the eye and could work very nicely into a multitude of different types of junk journals, even though the color is very subdued. It's very neutral. And of course you could jazz it up any way that you wanted to with some extra ephemera, something with color that you throw in there, and just use this as the background. I think that's about do us for this particular video. So I'll have to show you how I made the other two in another video. And if you found this content valuable and helpful to you, I hope you'll give the video a like and subscribe and share it with friends, and you know, leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. Did you like one as opposed to the other? Here was one of the original ideas, and then we did these. So this definitely has an Asian feel to it. This is definitely vintage, kind of American, European. And then we have this, which is a little bit more of a botanical feel. And of course, the very first one that I'm not that excited about is this one. So, having said all that, this is Miss Darling calling this a wrap. Bye-bye.